Hello, my family. It's been a long time, y'all. What's everybody been doing? I hope you guys are staying safe with everything opening back up. Y'all make sure y'all practice social distancing and wear y'all masks out in public. I know y'all following the news and saw that the other states that had already opened back up, their numbers went back up. So y'all want to make sure that you all are, and telling your kids to understand that this virus has not gone anywhere. I know I have to tell my kids that, but so I am on here today because Uncle Melvin reached out to me and asked if there was any way I could do a video for Juneteenth. And I just said, okay. I really didn't have a reason I couldn't do the video. But I had two people say something to me about YouTube videos. And when I started explaining to them the process, they was like, you really do all of that? And I was like, yeah. So I do all of my own editing. I do my own run-throughs. My kids don't help me with none of this, y'all. I've taught myself how to do the video edits. I've taught myself how to do the timing. I've taught myself how to work the camera with or without the remote control, how to add the little tidbits that I add in there and everything. I've taught myself how to do all of that. It is a lot. I was telling the person that I was talking to, and she was like, well, you know, we older. We don't know what all that taking. I was like, girl, you just don't know. But I did agree with something he said, and I'm going to cut this fan on low because I closed this door. I hope that's not too loud because I closed the door and the air was out there. So, not to mention the fact that it is Juneteenth, and I had to, I had to do it. It's been a long week. My boss called me and I was like, can I log off at 2 and pour a drink? And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, is that acceptable? And he was like, well, I mean, I'm just saying, depending on what you're pouring, do I need to log off at 2? I was like, sure. So, I didn't log off at 2. People started calling, requesting video conferences and everything. So, here I am, late after 6 o'clock, finally getting to do this video. I have been jotting some things down because, of course, Juneteenth has been all over the news today. This morning, which I did not know who he was until this morning. There is, he is a Chicago film legend. His name is, I hope I don't mess up this man's name, y'all. His name is Paman Rami. And he did the Blues Brothers of Boys and Men, and he did a movie that I just recently watched on Amazon Prime. 93 Days. That's a good movie, y'all. That is a really good, or at least I enjoyed it. I know everybody don't like to watch the stuff that I watch. I gave Auntie Renee a movie and she was like, Keisha, I fell asleep on it. So everybody's interests are not mine. I did, however, enjoy. If you enjoyed the movie Outbreak, you'll enjoy 93 Days. It was very heartfelt. And to see who ended up losing their lives and those that got to keep their lives, and to watch people who actually fought for their lives and those that chose not to fight for their life. It was a very heartfelt movie. I recommend it. But yeah, they had him on the news this morning, Paman Rami. And he is basically an international film producer, theater director. They wanted to talk to him about African American history. And one of the things that they asked him was what the difference was between the 13th Amendment and Juneteenth. And he basically, what he broke down was the Emancipation Proclamation, which is what initially led to Juneteenth. So the way that this went is that the Emancipation Proclamation, was made official January 1st, 1863. And this was basically what Lincoln put into play to free the slaves. Now, mind you, I said January 1st, 1863. What ended up happening is that there was a really big disregard to the Emancipation Proclamation. So you had people that were slaves that didn't know that they were free. Of course, slave owners were not trying to tell their slaves that they were free. Like, this went on for some time. And the state of Texas basically was like, they're not listening to him. So they were one of the biggest states to basically look at it like, we still got slaves here. We ain't freeing nobody. So what ended up happening is then you had the 13th Amendment of the Constitution, which took place. It was passed by the Senate April 8th, 1864, and then by the House on January 31st, 1865. Now, mind you, it was official January 1st, 1863. This was made official. It took over 2.5 years before Texas actually went ahead and started freeing their people. And what ended up happening, I'm just give you guys a little excerpt from this. What I'm reading from is Juneteenth.com/history. And what ended up happening, I want to make sure I'm giving you all the correct information. So I'm going to get this directly from here, because what they said was Major General Gordon Granger landed at Galveston, Texas, with the news that the war had ended and that the enslaved were now free. He literally had to go there and explain to them that slaves were free. It was, people started feeling as though Lincoln was not respected by Texas. And they were wondering why it was that he didn't seem like I guess they were wanting him to enforce it, and he didn't enforce it, especially as far as Texas went. But General Gordon Granger came through after the war had ended. He explained all of this to them. And then there was something called the General Order Number 3. Where he basically stated the people of Texas. That was his way of saying, I'm talking to you all. He said the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and a hired laborer. Meaning, if I'm going to continue working under you, I'm going to get paid wages. This is what he came through and had to enforce over 2.5 years later. Now, what they were noting earlier that I was listening to is that there were so many slaves that were clueless as to how this happened, when it happened. They didn't know anything. And they were questioning Galveston in regards to why it took them so long to actually free their slaves. And they just kind of felt as though, and I'm paraphrasing, they just kind of felt as though that was our choice. So that right there is basically the difference between Juneteenth, which Galveston, Granger went to Galveston June 19th, 1865, even though the Emancipation Proclamation was official January 1st, 1863. This is what made Juneteenth so significant, because it was like there was some of them out there that just had not known that they were actually free. Now, one of the things that was very, very vital that Peymon Rami mentioned this morning in the news is he said they were free, but there was absolutely no direction. He said they were free. They didn't know where to go. They didn't know what to do with themselves. They received their freedom, but they didn't receive any direction. He also mentioned the fact that this is not something that's actually mentioned in school. It's not part of, I actually looked up a few curriculums, Black history curriculums, and they speak of the Emancipation Proclamation and they speak of the 13th Amendment. What they do not speak of is, what I started noticing as I was reading is that what they tend to leave out are the bad parts of something good. So it was kind of like when things would change for the better for the people, it wasn't something that was actually made part of history. It was one of those things where it was like, we're going to celebrate this, but they're like, well, we're not going to talk about it. So it I don't know. It seemed like if it brought on tension, then they're like, there's no need in us bringing it up in the books. We celebrate the fact that Lincoln did the Emancipation Proclamation. We celebrate the fact that there's a 13th Amendment, but nobody ever actually looked at the fact that, okay, there came a date where somebody actually had to say, hey, those people are actually free. Let them go. That wasn't something that's been mentioned in the books. He also mentioned that there's a whole lot that's left out about a number of Black people who were first. I thought that was very, very vital. I'm reading through my notes that I wrote down real fast today. I'm sorry, y'all. So there was a guy that was mentioned. He was the first person. He was the first African American to actually work to make this a holiday in Texas. And he actually succeeded. It was January 1st, 1980, and his name is Al Edwards, and he was a Black legislator. And he worked to make it an official state holiday for Texas. From what I was reading, they are currently still trying to make this something that's across all of the states. I also read that Nike has made this a paid holiday for their employees. So we noticing that people setting trends and people actually following along with them. So who knows? Maybe Nike might have set a standard and maybe it will go through at some point. I also wanted to point out that I looked up a couple of firsts that he was right. It wasn't technically, a lot of this stuff isn't technically mentioned, or we're just not educating our kids in the way that we should. If it comes up, I'll have them look it up and read it back to me. I feel like that's the only way that they learn. For me, I can read it and then I can take the notes and then I read the notes again and then I got it. So when my kids come to me and we talk about things and they have questions and stuff like that, I have them Google it themselves. They can Google everything else on that phone. They do everything else on that phone. You can look up your Black history. And then I have them read it back to me. And usually as they're reading it back to me is usually when they have questions. So for those of you who are young adults, youth who are getting these videos, I'm going to tell you all who have some of the first were. So Mayor Harold Washington was the first Black mayor of Chicago, and he was in office from 1983 to 1987. He held a number of additional offices after that. I encourage you all to go back and look up those other he was a beast, if you ask me. Go back and look at those additional offices that he held. Thurgood Marshall, that should be a home name, but I'm sure it's right now. So he was the first African American court justice. And what made him significant is that he was nominated by the then president, Lyndon B. Johnson. So I thought that to me is what makes him such an important part of this. And the first African American female that was appointed Supreme Court Justice, her name is Peggy Ann Quince. And for the first African American female to be appointed, this just recently happened in 2008, and she was there from 2008 to 2010. Booker T. Washington. You guys probably saw some of him in the Madam C.J. Walker series on Netflix. If you all haven't watched it, that's a good series. I encourage you all to go back and watch that. Her story is phenomenal. But he put himself through school, and he founded the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. One thing I found out that I did not know about him is that he was actually the first African American to be put on a postage stamp. He was put on the 10-cent postage stamp in 1940. When you look it up, there's actually his picture on it and everything, y'all. I found the first African American woman to receive an Oscar. Her name is Hattie McDaniel, and she received an Oscar in 1940. And then, of course, there is Miss Madam C.J. Walker, was the first self-made African American millionaire. But that's really all I have. I didn't want to make this long. I didn't want nobody to say they fell asleep on my video. But I encourage you guys to don't just wait on Juneteenth. Don't just wait for African American History Month. Take some time to actually get to know your heritage. Take some time to get to actually know your history. If you guys have kids that are in grade school or in high school currently, I would encourage you, when you get to parent-teacher conference, to ask them if they're taking any form of history or Black American history, and see what the curriculum is, and whatever it is that they're not giving your kids, then help them out. My kids probably tired of me since quarantine. I have been looking up some of everything. I've been asking questions. I've been sending them to the board. I know they're tired of me. But that's okay. At some point, they'll get to the point where they tired, and if something come up, they can actually speak to it. And just the fact that they like, no, my mama constantly taught us that. It doesn't matter. In that moment, you remembered it because it was taught to you. So, Asia actually has her graduation next week. They have sent out 3 different dates. I will send a text once I have the correct date. It's not going to be a real graduation. She will be going to a door, and someone will come out and hand her her diploma, which is where you have the chance to basically get photo ops or whatever the case may be. So, once I have that date, I'll put it in a text. It's going to be during the week. It's going to be between the hours of 9 and 10. Hopefully we can get at least 1 or 2 people to come out just to support her. And I think that's it. I just wanted to make sure that I got this video in. I didn't want Uncle Melvin to think that I forgot. Y'all, my days be so long. It's ridiculous. People think because you work from home that you got it made. No, you don't. No, you don't. I mean, I tried to get in an extra hour of sleep yesterday. I done digressed. I tried to get in an extra hour of sleep yesterday, and it was like 8 o'clock. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get up at 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock on the dot, my cell phone was ringing, and it was somebody from work. I had to clear my throat and everything like I had already been woke. She's like, can you answer a question for me? I'm so confused. Are you logged in? I was like, I sure am. So... and it's Friday, and I still got people popping up on my email right now. Normally, I work through this, but I'm enjoying my pineapple today. The 2 oldest ones been at work all day. And ain't nobody been here but the little one, and she has been into Garfield all day. So I've been able to get me some work done and finally get this video done. I'm only doing one take of this video, so I'm not finna go back through here and take out stuff that probably shouldn't have been said. I'm not finna go back in this computer looking for any more African American first. This is going to be it. This will be the one video I will not edit. Layla is not finna come through that door jumping in because she hear me in here. I told her, stay in here. Let me do this video, and that's that. So, I think that's it, y'all. So, yeah, I encourage you guys to get to know some of the things that I gave y'all, dig a little bit deeper. There was another website. I'm gonna give it to you guys real quick. Hold on, I just got kicked out. What was the other website? Oh, so I was looking at, it's called ThoughtCode, ThoughtCo.com. /13th dash amendment. And what it is the history of the 13th Amendment and its impact. It was a lot of information there. It was crazy. They referred to having 2 centuries of slavery. They talked about key takeaways for the 13th Amendment. There was a YouTube video in there. I haven't gotten to that yet. How the Emancipation Proclamation seemed to be a slippery slope. There was something else in here. Okay, at the bottom there were some other things. They give you an African American history timeline of the things that actually happened from 1865. You have to go all the way down to the bottom of the page. It says African American history timeline, and it gives you a timeline of the things that were significant that happened after June 19th, 1865 through 1869. I think it's those years. To me, it seemed like there was a lot that was packed in there that we may want to get to know. Because keep in mind, like Mr. Romney said on the news, they weren't handed any instructions. They were freed, and they didn't have the slightest clue as to what it was that they were getting ready to do. What they did know how to do, and what we do good today, this is what a lot of them said, they knew how to celebrate it. They talked about the different foods that they cooked. This is part of our culture right now today. They talked about the different foods that they cooked. They talked about them actually having cookouts. They also talked about how when they tried to start celebrating June 19th, when those first few years that it happened, that people were shutting things down to keep them from celebrating in the parks and different things like that. They celebrated anyway. They went back to the riversides and backyards and things like that. So I encourage you guys to go on and look up some of this stuff and just read about it. It's actually intriguing. So I just spent a couple hours looking through some stuff and taking some notes and everything. So I think that's it. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to text or in the YouTube link, you guys know you can comment below. I hope y'all know how to use YouTube at this point. If not, that's fine. All right, y'all. I love you guys. Have a wonderful weekend. And please be safe. I know y'all hit the firecrackers out here. Please be safe, y'all. All right, bye.